Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Business as Unusual show. My name is Luke. I'm the CEO of Sleeping Giant Media and Giant Campus, and we focus on getting relevant traffic to our clients' websites, in case you're wondering what we do. I have got an incredible guest on the show today, Adam from Belmont Healthcare. I want to say care homes, but they've changed, and that's my bad. I've known him from a previous life, and there's going to be some really interesting and potentially some challenging topics that we're going to talk to Adam about, and what the challenges they've been facing in the care sector. So this time I'm going to definitely focus on pressing the right button, and we'll be back just in a minute to carry on with the interview. Hi guys, and so in case you're wondering when I say pressing the right button, so last show on Wednesday I managed to press the wrong button and sit here looking quite foolish for a while, which my brand and marketing team have now turned into a GIF, which is on LinkedIn, so thanks very much for that, guys. Nothing like making a mistake live on air. If you've got any questions during the content today, please do put them in. We're broadcasting across Facebook, YouTube, Periscope and Twitch, so if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chats. They come through to me and I can put them through to Adam as we go. So without further ado, let's introduce Adam. Adam, how are you doing, sir?
Very well. How you doing, Luke? Thanks for the invitation.
Pleasure, mate. No, it's good. We was obviously chatting kind of pre-show, and I think the last time we actually kind of caught up properly was, 3-ish years ago now?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, somewhere in Kent at some point. Yeah, I can't believe it, actually, because it was quite regular for a period, wasn't it, when I was down in Kent quite often. So we will change that.
We have committed to changing that. That's what we will take forward from the madness of all of this. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as I said in the intro there, it's a really, really kind of challenging space at the moment, the kind of the care home sector, which I have to say from an outsider know very little about, other than what you kind of see on the news. I mean, how's it kind of been for you? Just a sort of a broad overview of how things are looking.
It really, really tough to start with. I think a lot of uncertainty, guidance, so many different things happening, and I think the difference between what is professional guidance and what's public guidance. So it doesn't help with what's put out on a newscast, on a daily coronavirus newscast, is not necessarily what's happening on the front line. And I think that was the hardest bit. I think it was a forgotten element about the care sector to begin with, and then it took a while for people to really understand it.
And it's now kind of like the real focus, obviously. Like there's a lot, suddenly the news is really, really focused on kind of the care sector, and suddenly that shift of focus of suddenly not being involved to then now almost being kind of the one of the main talking points that you see on the news. How's that kind of been for yourself and everybody else in the sector?
I think it's good and bad, and we were talking about this in the sort of preamble, weren't we? It's great because, personally, I've been lobbying for the change in view of social care for a long time, where we want people to the industry needs professionalised. It should be respected. It should be viewed in a certain way. It's people working extremely hard and doing challenging jobs, but actually well trained and well educated, and they have to do some really important things on a day-to-day basis. It's a shame a pandemic was what was needed to get some attention. Yeah, and it's also a shame that it took a lot of lobbying from. I'm part of a lobbying group, and the amount of calls and things that we went on to try and force the issue to get people to go, hang on a minute, we're really struggling here. Just on PPE, which is the new phrase. Everyone must be going mad about PPE. It's amazing that Amazon and you can't get PPE and air freight is 4 times it used to be. And, what we would pay 10p for a mask and we're now paying £1.20 per mask. And that was a challenge in itself when you were phoning up and saying, oh, by the way, we need 500 masks. And they were, okay, well, we can't have them because they've gone to the hospital. But we still need them as well. We've got vulnerable adults who are unwell. Just to put it into perspective, I run a trade association in Kent, and we did a survey of our membership a couple of weeks ago. And just of the first 38 people, this is the number that I remember, the 38 companies that responded, We would, in Kent, they needed 238,000 masks a week.
Jeez.
That's what's needed right now. And that's just for 38 businesses. Because you've got to think, if you're going into somebody's house and doing a care interaction, you can't wear the same mask for the next one.
No, sure, yeah.
So if you're doing 10 calls in a day, which is quite easy, that's 10 masks that one person needs every day.
Yeah.
And 10 pairs of gloves and 10 aprons. And so it's been a bit of a strange getting into that.
Yeah. And how are things, at the moment in terms of, that access to PPE? Because as you said, it's something that, everybody knows what that means now. And it wasn't even a thing on anyone's radar other than in the care sector, until the last kind of couple of months. But, how is that kind of access to that? What's it like for the guys that are working for you?
It's got better. I mean, people have started to acknowledge that we need it, and there's lots of companies that provide it. And fortunately, 2 of them are actually the biggest in the country and based in Kent. So that's kind of helped. So it's got easier, and certain local authorities are working with us. So Kent County Council has supplied £2.7 million worth of PPE to care providers for free in Kent. So that was they're actually using that money that they were given from the government for good. So it's got better. I think we went through a couple of week period where some people it was quite challenging. We personally never had an issue. We never ran out ourselves, but I know a lot of other people have had some issues with it. But it's just an odd thing now that most conversations that I tend to have tends to be about PPE, and you just think, unbelievable that we thought that talking about gloves and aprons and things, because these are stuff that we use all the time anyway.
Yeah,
the masks is the big change, and we deal with majority of our individuals that we deal with on day-to-day basis, either dementia, Parkinson's. So suddenly wearing a mask is quite challenging for. So you've kind of then lost that connection between the individual and the person. So it's how to overcome that. So we've started doing things like making designs on them, or having sort of, trying to use the mask and try and do different things with them to get them engaged. Because it's quite frightening, must be, that all of a sudden somebody's coming into your bedroom with a mask on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, totally. I can only imagine. And I think we're seeing this sort of conversation almost with our kids as well. I know you've got a young one as well, but almost like the thought of going back to school with the possibility of wearing a mask is just like, is that good for to kids as well? Is that really going to be a nice environment? So that's a really good. I hadn't even considered that. One of the things we know, again, really sort of tough sort of topic, and you mentioned one of the homes that had actually got coronavirus in it, and actually it's been some really, really kind of challenging situations you've had to deal with obviously the kind of impact on the residents. And how can you, or what have you been able to do to try to help families going through those situations, trying to get in contact with loved ones, but obviously not being able to see them as well?
Well, initially we were quite quick off the mark, so we actually did locked down to non-essential visiting on the 9th of March, 10th of March, sorry, the Tuesday. I remember it because I was at an event in London the next day, and I remember I've been in London. I don't think I can go back to the home tomorrow, just in case, because I've been in London, and it was kind of that total uncertainty of what was going on. So I remember it being then. So we locked down pretty early to non-essential visiting. So we knew pretty quickly that we had to open up better lines of communication than we had before. We have tablets in all of the homes, so we've been using Google Meet initially and Zoom to try and do that to get people to talk to each other. We're quite active on Facebook. Just the demographic seems to work for that. So we've had a lot of communication. We do a lot of photo sharing on stuff to communicate, and then try to communicate with families honestly from the start and say, look, we're really sorry that this is what we're going to have to do, but these are the reasons why, and try and manage that. Now we're looking at, well, what do we do next? Because it's been going on for 12 weeks. We can't, some people you won't be able to see them. The biggest challenge has been when we've had people pass away, and those people have not been able to come and say goodbye. That's been this bit. That's been, we did have quite a severe issue in one of our homes, which was quite tough to deal with, where we lost quite a number of people in 6 days. And this was when I did an article for the FT about this, because the biggest issue was that only 3 of those passings were actually registered as COVID deaths.
Oh,
so
really?
this is where this whole issue has come around about care homes, the sort of false numbers.
Yeah.
Because what was happening is the guidance that we were getting was, they haven't got a cough, so it can't be COVID-19. Because this was some time ago now. It was just sort of weeks ago when we had the issue, when the guidance was temperature and cough.
Yeah.
So again, it's such fast moving. We're only dealing with the guidance that you're given. So, GPs would say, it's only a temperature, it must be this. Oh, okay. So you're then managing it differently, and you're not then giving the confidence to staff in what's actually happening. So when we finally got positive tests, we only started getting testing sort of 4.5 weeks ago. So we're dealing with this with not knowing whether your staff were positive or negative. You were just having to say, if somebody had any symptom, well, you're going to have to take 14 days off.
Yeah.
And then you've got the staff challenge, because it's not like an office-based business where you could suddenly send everybody home and they can work. You physically need people to be there. And you also have a dependency model. So you look at the needs of the individuals on a day-to-day basis, normally weekly as an overall, but at the moment we're assessing it daily and say, well, how many people do we need to care for these types of needs on a day-to-day basis? Well, if you haven't got any staff at all, you're then, there's a possibility of putting yourself at risk because you haven't got any staff.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've never not had any staff. Look what happened in Spain, where ultimately the fear factor meant that nobody went to work and people in care homes were just left on their own. And fortunately, in this country, we've never had any issues like that. But that was a real business challenge to say, how are we managing that? And then if you've got family members reading about that issue on the BBC, they were on the phone straight away saying, what's going to happen? How's it going? And to be honest, they've all been great. Not everyone, and we've had some issues, but, they've taken to what we've had to do to cope. And some of it is coping. I've got to be honest, some of it's just coping.
Yeah, which is just totally understandable. I mean, obviously in your sector, death is part of, what you kind of, what the team have to deal with on a, as part of what they do. But obviously when it's come to, an increased level, obviously with coronavirus involved, what sort of toll is that taking on the team? I mean, and again, how have you been able to kind of help and support them?
I mean, the one where we lost a lot in a week was just horrible. And still, I don't think they've really had opportunity to grieve, because one of the things that people probably don't realise is that across the care industry, it's only about 30%, especially when it's sort of fundamental challenging care, that actually have a family that come and visit. How scary is that? You'll find that the family tends to be the care staff. So a lot of funerals that go to it tend to be the care staff that go to them, which is, it's just something. So about 9 months ago, I remember I was in a meeting and he just came to me, we weren't supporting our staff in doing this. So what we do is we actually provide like a soul midwifery program. So at the moment, we've actually got a course going on today, which is what reminded me of it. So we kind of have a soul midwife who sort of manages grief and bereavement for our staff. So they can go on, they're on a web call today where they can sort of express and try and understand grief. Because I actually think that as care businesses, we don't do enough to support staff who go through that on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So it was just something where I thought, hang on a minute. These people are really upset. Well, I should be doing more for their well-being. So we changed it to sort of, we also said there's compassionate leave. So rather than just saying compassionate leave is for your own family members, we allow compassionate leave within the business if it's, a resident, because ultimately it could be very difficult for you to come back to the same place that you work every day if you've got that connection with somebody that you might have worked or looked after for 7 or 8 years. Yeah. So those are things that I don't think people realise happen and aren't very well articulated. And I certainly think as a business in the past, we haven't been very good at supporting our staff. But fortunately, sort of 6 to 9 months ago, we took that decision. And now I think that's helping us right now in having that. It's still never going to be easy, but these are just small things. Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge, obviously, I guess, as well, it is still a business. It still relies on, money coming in to pay the salaries and kind of, balance all of it. Sorry, I've got Ella. This is a live show, kid. Can you please leave? And let me bear with me 1 second. Dad mode activated. Ella, can you please leave the room?
I know that you're really sad. I don't know what's going on right now, but could you just... Yeah. I know, but it's a live show, kid. I'm on live right now. Can you go over there, please? Just sit down there very quietly if you're going to do that. Live shows, people. Welcome to the new world.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
I'm glad I've got the dad mode on here. That's all I can say. And now I've completely lost my chain of thought. That's right. I was going to say. So the challenge is obviously, there's kind of wages to pay, there's salaries to kind of to pay as well, and obviously, it's putting people into a care home now, and I don't mean to use it putting them in, but having to put sort of loved ones into care with everything that's going on at the moment is obviously a challenge that you're going to face. I mean, how is that going to kind of impact the business and ultimately the overall kind of care that you're able to kind of give as well?
There's a couple of ways of sort of cutting it, and I'm really glad that you've asked that, because actually one of the things that I've been a big advocate for is there's a lot of bad, for some reason, bad sort of press or bad feeling around care businesses in the fact that they're private. So ultimately they are funded and they're privately run businesses, but they shouldn't be looked at in a bad way, because they cost a lot of money to operate. And you get a lot of people that say, government pay for this and you shouldn't be charging this sort of money. Let's just look at the theory of it. I did a report on this last year that BDO, the average price of a hotel in the UK last year was £101 a night without breakfast. So take that thought, and you're delivering personal care at borderline nurse level to somebody who's unwell with medication, food, personal care, all of those elements that come with it. So and you're running that in a building. So if the average price of a hotel is that, then you've got to look at, well, what does it cost to then get 24/7 care? It's not cheap. So when these figures are sort of bounded out, it's because it does pay for a lot of things, and our staffing ratios need to be extremely high. We work on about 1 to 4, 1 to 5. So it's kind of one staff member to every 4 to 5 residents. So if you've got a 100-bed home, do the maths. It's kind of the amount. That's just face-to-face care. That's not management, front of house, chefs, housekeeping. So there is that element. And the quandary that we've got at the moment is you've got a massive gap in, if we do start to people to pass on because of the disease, or just generally because you are going to get that natural attrition of individuals, which happens because it's later in life. You've got to replace that with revenue, and the revenue comes from services being sold, which means you're delivering a service for what you're selling. And the stigma about care at the moment is, well, we talked about it before, didn't we? Albeit the goodwill is there with Clap for Carers and all of the sentiment that we're getting behind it, which is amazing. Thank you. It's about time, in my opinion, having done it for such a long time. But if you were making a real decision on, am I going to put my grandparents or my parents into a care home right now? If we're all honest, we're going to say no, which means you're then in that fundamental quandary. We've got a great bit of goodwill, but actually we wouldn't place. So what's going to happen is you're going to see your demand drop. But so there comes a
baseline costs. Baseline costs are still there.
Being able to operate. So that's the biggest worry for us, is then how do we position ourselves to say, look, while the press is there, it's not very positive, but this is kind of what's happening. Remember, in homes, infection control is our primary objective anyway. So we are constantly doing infection control. So it's how we then package that up to say to everybody, this is what's really happening, and this is how we can, this is what your loved one is going to get if you came into a care environment. And we have to keep filling up, because what's going to happen, there's going to be a process where the care home may not be able to continue. And we're already starting to see that. There's 2 in Scotland and 1 in Luton in the press yesterday that are due looking that they may have to close because they can't physically continue to operate, which then you're starting, where do the individuals then have to go somewhere, which will either be another care home or worse, into the NHS. And one thing that people don't realise is that the care home society, as it were, in the UK has 3 times the amounts of beds than what's available in the NHS. 3 times. We employ 1.6 million people in the UK. So that is a massive burden if you start to see some fail. So what my argument isn't more, or my statement isn't more about the business side of things. It's more about the thought process to say, well, actually, we need them there. So we need to trust that we've got over the hump, and we need to trust that there is a right place for people to go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. But that is my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Moving forward. How do we market ourselves to the hearts and minds to say, we're ready and we know how to get through this.
Yeah.
We've done it already. You can trust us that we will look after your family.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're doing some fantastic stuff. So just some comments from chat. So Alex, just to say a huge thank you to Adam and any members in his team for the fantastic work on the vulnerable, which I think is great message. Also Sequoia saying keep up the good work, Adam. Belmont and care homes all over the country. A lot of people laughing at my child walking in to the shot, so thank you for that. And a question from James saying, I guess technology is vital, especially during lockdown. How has it worked out for Adam's team? What solutions and partners does Adam recommend? And in fact, we were going to do some sort of shout out to some of the businesses or people that have been kind of helping, or that have been doing a great job in some format. So maybe it's a good time to kind of to shout out some of those that have been helping you particularly.
Well prompted, James.
Does James work in an IT company by chance?
He does, yeah. He runs our G Suite platform.
Oh, does he?
So I must admit, but he is right. I mean, I have all.
James, you were going to get a shout out anyway. This is, James.
Yeah,
we were going to shout you out.
We had actually said that at the beginning, hadn't I? I did say I'll give James a shout. He's got a good podcast actually. But ultimately he has helped. So one of the ones is on the tablet side of things and Wi-Fiing our buildings, which has made it enable us to be able to have tablets in rooms when we've had to self-isolate, so that they could share stories and conversations with family members and check out Facebook comments pages and stuff. But the main thing is we have had to close our central administration offices, right, because ultimately our finance and a lot of our people who work within the admin offices in the homes, we didn't want to risk the comings and goings. So they're all working from home. And because we don't have desktops, we only have laptops, and we work on G Suite, it was literally pick them up, go home, turn it on. Hello, we're back to work. And I couldn't say we'd have probably had that ease if we weren't. But we've been using G Suite for nearly 2 years, so it's been brilliant for us. And I have my morning meetings with all of the managers, considering I live 2 hours away from some of the homes. We have a meet, we share screens, we discuss the current situation, we share our COVID-19 tracking spreadsheets. So, those technologies have been really good, but there's other technologies that I think have advantages now. So ones that require less interaction with people, especially to spread. So, things like we're trialing a service which is acoustic monitoring. So, but it's a Wi-Fi based acoustic monitoring. So rather than having to, because if you've got people who are poorly in the evening, you have to do nightly checks. Okay. Because people forget that, half of the workforce work from 8 o'clock at night till 8 o'clock in the morning while we're all asleep. There is people physically awake operating buildings. So tonight I will have 27 people working through, 29 people tonight, all working through from 8 o'clock tonight till 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And if you've got somebody that's ill, you have to do a 2-hour nightly check, which means opening the door, seeing if they're okay. Well, actually, it's pretty unpleasant, more likely to wake them up, light coming in the room. Yeah. So we've been looking at investing time and energy into a project that enables us to monitor stat. And now a lot of care homes have this in the big purpose-built new builds, but they're all installed with Cat5 and stuff. Yeah. But this sort of technology is very much it's a Wi-Fi plug-and-play app on the phone. And if they move or there's a cough or an alert, and it can tell whether somebody's got a chest infection or a water infection, which could stop potential falls. So things like that, I think, are going to come to the forefront, because actually you won't need the staff interaction, because essentially you only need to go in an emergency scenario. Yeah. So those types of things I certainly think are going to become, and I really hope that there's a better interaction between the NHS and social care, because social care, which is essentially what we're social care, are seen as the runt of the litter when it comes to the NHS. And one of the things that I think that people need to realise is, like I said, is social care is a support mechanism for the NHS. It's got 3 times the amount of beds, and we will help get people from hospital into either back into their own homes or into an environment where they can actually lead a near to normal life, whereas they won't get that in hospital.
Yeah.
So actually, why don't we see more interaction with ourselves in the hospitals to get a bit more respect? And I'm hoping that things like Clap for Carers have started to do that, but that there needs to be technology that aids that transition. The Sequoia boys are on, obviously, as well, who do our care planning software. So
you got to shout them out. You got to shout them out.
Well. I have, yeah. They're over in Denmark on lock-in.
Okay.
CMO and myself, we had a virtual beer last Thursday, actually, just for catch-up. They were good. So, yeah, technology is very important.
Amazing.
Really important.
And actually, I wanted to, because actually the time is flying by. One of the things in the background, I mean, it's fascinating, really, really interesting, because again, it's for a lot of us outside of the care sector, it's just a challenge that we don't, our challenges are different. We obviously don't have people manning things at night, and we can work from home. There's no kind of contact sort of issue really for us. So so it's really interesting to try to understand and the significant challenges that you guys are facing. You mentioned and I can see in the background the t-shirts that you've got. You've been doing some amazing work, and I love the fact that you kind of worked that out. I was waiting for the gun show.
They've been in all of my calls for the last few weeks, so they've got a position that they've just stayed.
Oh, I thought it was just set up for this. I was like,
I put a second one up for you.
Oh, thanks, man.
There's been one up. Yeah, I put the second one.
Okay, good to know. I was just wondering, could you've raised a huge amount of money. Can you maybe sort of give everybody, the sort of the viewers, an idea of the stuff that you've been doing and potentially how they can get involved to help support?
Yeah, so I'm involved in a charity. I'm a trustee of a charity called the Care Workers Charity. And originally, it's been going for years, but it was rebooted by myself and a chap called Ben Allen from a company called Wellness. And we decided they wanted to push what was a benevolent fund for care workers who, because it's predominantly poorly paid in the past, and it has a knock-on effect. And naturally, you find that people who work in care or in care work tend to have some sort of caring background. So whether it's a child who may have caring needs, such as autism or learning disabilities, or family members who've been caring, that it's kind of like a calling. So you find that they've ended up in some sort of difficulty, whether that's financial, mental well-being, or domestic violence. So the charity was there to raise money for those people, whether it was to help you could get a grant from us. Then it we worked with a charity called Turn to Us, which a lot of people have probably heard of, and we link into them to create well-being sort of links, so people can get sort of news on mental health and financial support. And rather than just giving money, it was more about how can we get people to educate themselves on finances, become better. And so it was trying to widen the reach of the charity. Then we were looking at creating all sorts of other things. And then COVID hit. And ultimately, you found that some people weren't furloughing. They were saying that care workers were just SSP, some of the industries, because some people aren't still in the dark ages. So, that meant that people were, substantially underpaid. Then you were finding that people were shielding because they couldn't go to work. So because of a loved one, maybe got an NHS letter. So all of those reasons meant there was a compounding financial impact. So we decided to create this, so it wasn't our executive director, Carolina, wanted to really push this COVID fund. So we've raised 1.4 million in the last 8 weeks.
Incredible.
Towards that from a number of routes. The T-shirts is one. So there was a Choose Our NHS blue T-shirt on ASOS. And we thought, I didn't. Carolina thought, because she's very bullish. She just rang and said, hang on a minute, it's not just about the NHS here. We want our own T-shirt. And our logo for the Care Workers Charity is orange and white. So they produce these. So they're £20 each, and £14 of that goes to the charity.
Amazing.
From ASOS, which is great. And then we've got local authorities like Solihull. Big shout out to Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council. Donated 250,000.
Wow.
And then we've had some big care groups, Hallmark Care Homes, donated £35,000. And then there's just been loads of cool stuff going on. So we run this huge charity ball every year, which may not happen now in September. And we created this hashtag called Sparkle for Social Care, where on Friday, the 13th of April, I think it was, the Monday of the 13th of April, after the bank holiday weekend, we were asking everybody to post Instagram videos of sparkle. So we were getting people to put like face paints on and do all sorts of wear sparkly stuff on social to try and raise. And that raised another sort of 10, 15,000. So just been doing all sorts of different things, and different care home groups have been getting involved. So we're up to 1.4 million now. And the target was originally 1 million. We've now upped it to 2 million. And there's a lot of positive things. There's a really, really big thing that's going to come out next Thursday and Friday. So I can't talk about it. It's confidential, but keep an eye. I'll make sure, and you guys can share it.
We shall do some sharing when it comes out. Awesome.
It's really cool. And one of my staff members frontline was involved in it, and I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic. Well, the guys in the chat, the link to the Care Workers Charity is in there. And if you're watching this on a replay, we'll post the links below the video, so you'll be able to kind of access that and take a look. But mate, we have run out of time. That was fascinating, and the time has absolutely flown by. I commend you for the work that you've been doing to really help, in a really, really kind of tough spot, and just wish you the best of luck with the continuing kind of.
Can I just give one little cheeky shout out?
You do that. Shout that out. Go.
Yeah, so I just wanted to shout out a friend of mine, Simon Parker, who runs a thing called the Care Home Show. So it's it's not live, sorry, but it's a recorded video podcast, which has some really cool content about the care sector, and he interviews some really, really interesting high profile people and sort of challenges the status quo. And I've been on a few times, and I really think it's a positive thing to get people going. Awesome. It's called the Care Home Show, and it's run by SP&P Partners.
Brilliant. Well, if we grab a link, we can post that as well. But thanks again for joining us. And as I said, we've got to take this forward now. So in the new world, when we're allowed out, let's actually catch up. It's been far too long, my friend. But
100%.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Cool. So, guys, that is it for another show. We will.
Campus. We love all of the courses, and we have.
Right. I pressed the wrong button again. Oh my God! I've lost control. That's supposed to be my Wednesday scene. We're back here on Wednesday. I don't know why it's changed to the ending one. But anyway, we will be back here on Wednesday at 4:30 with Simon Chaplin from the accountants group. So we're going to be understanding a lot of the challenges that they've been facing, and get some insights from him of what he's been doing for his group to kind of add some value. So I hope you found it useful. Please do like, share, and follow us on the social channels. Have a great weekend, and we shall see you next time.